Riveting. What to do.
The rest of all aspects of local politics and government.
Me too.
Sure.
Put the fire out. I truly wish some days that I could go back to that mindset. Those were really good days. I don't know what I do now, but it was much simpler for me. I was responsible for the gear I was gonna wear, for the vehicle I was gonna ride. Yeah.
Oh, call to order, pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Haley. Here. Tony,
Here.
James,
Here.
Brian,
Here.
Debbie, Dave. All right, next we'll open it up for public comment and I would like to welcome Terry Ham Morris.
Well, I didn't wear my coaching outfit. Do I push this button?
Yes, please.
Okay. The other thing I would like to it's not a criticism or anything like that. It's just a point of like explanation. Because I ran last year on, keeping taxes low. So think I need to explain something. I'd like to address the savings account analogy that Mr. Walker used as an example to explain why our school budget will be much higher this year. When I was campaigning last year, I ran on keeping taxes low. But if a resident was home and I was able to speak with them, I explained that we have this large discretionary fund that we've had for 3 years. And that due to one-time federal money that the school received from these funds that were related to the COVID pandemic, I went on to say that those funds were 22% of the total school budget and that they had to be spent because at that time, no more than 3% of the budget could be in that discretionary fund. And it seemed to me like the savings account analogy was good, but it should have been called a discretionary fund with money in it or something like that, because it wasn't really a savings account so much. That it had been used to reduce, I wanted to explain to them what it was for, or what it had been used for, and it had been used to reduce the amount of money that would have been paid in taxes, approximately $1 million a year for the last 3 years. And this year, the money ran out, not because it had been spent, and the discretionary fund is now where it belongs. That money had to be spent each year, and it was used about approximately $1 million a year for the last 3 years. Now I believe it's at 9% since the 3% has been raised to 9%. So I think the discretionary 8%. Thank you. The school would have been penalized had they not used that money within the time limits, and it was a good way to keep taxes low when many people were out of work or had reduced hours. I was not a town official at that time, but I wanted to warn the people that I was meeting that this money was running out and that we were going to see higher taxes due to this anomaly, as in Mr. Walker called it the school savings account, which I believe should have been properly at that time addressed as a discretionary, because that money wasn't really necessarily savings. This year, we have to pay the full bill for the schools, no $1 million bailout. We have to make up the million that is no longer there as it has been in past years, plus the cost of living increases and increase for staff. So that is going to be why the taxes go up this year. And I think people should understand that that money that we had was fortunate that we had it at the time, but now it's gone. And I felt people should remember that the federal money the school received as a result of COVID was what kept our taxes low the last few years. And we were fortunate that it was there and that our taxes were low for that period of difficulty. It was our tax money and rightfully returned to us. Now I'm kind of saying not right now things are a whole lot better financially for a lot of us, but hopefully they'll be improving in the not too distant future. But I did want to make that clarification because I did run on keeping the taxes low, but I did try to explain why we weren't going to be able to keep the taxes as low as they had been for the school this year. And I hope the public, I was hoping the place would be full, like it was last week, but no such luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Ed Ford.
Evening, I'm Ed Ford from Hermon. Before I start, can I just make a correction from last? I may have misspoke. I want to double check on that before I start. So last week, I think, Mr. Superintendent, I mentioned that the tuition, not tuition, but the revenue lines were way down. And I was referring to state subsidy, local required, and tuition revenue. And I think I mentioned they were way down. I just want to correct that. The line, the numbers that are on the document you put out, that's just up to this. That's just actual today, that's not the end. So when I looked at that, I assumed it was in the end, and that was an incorrect. So that was my fault. They're currently those are not down. I'm a Hermon taxpayer. If I wanted to be a school board member, I would have run for that office. It's clear to me, likely for many others who take the time to review this budget. This year's process lacks transparency for the average taxpayer to ask questions of the school board members. The first school board vote was taken, in my opinion, in violation of state statute and the spirit of Maine's freedom of access statutes. And the second vote tonight will be taken when the school board has had this full document deciding on how to spend 20.5 million taxpayer dollars for 3 days. It still falls short the basic details that are required for a school board member, not me, I'm just a taxpayer, to review the budget, as is the oath to their taxpayers. This creates a chaotic and confusing picture, and which certainly is going to lead to mistrust as well as a chance for increased mistakes. If tonight's document does leave tonight and go to the town council, I certainly hope somebody will take the time to make note of some of those. So I just have a few, and we're not gonna answer the questions that were asked last week, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if I ask them again, maybe they'll be answered sometime in the future.
I just would ask, that you, as I do everyone, if you would just shoot those in an email
Okay.
to me. Once you're after tonight, that would be helpful to me.
Will do. I'm gonna ask that this school board schedules a budget workshop with the school board prior to the final vote. For somehow, this school board was able to schedule 4 meetings in the last 16 days, including tonight, but they couldn't schedule 1 workshop for the entire board. Why is this budget process being rushed through without proper oversight for the entire board? This is called a rubber stamp, by the way, and it's not a good way for this document to begin its journey. Quick question, how many personnel changes since January of this year, 25, across the entire school budget were due to this 25-26 school budget cycle? And I will email those to you. Number 2, look, the undesignated fund was used in the amount of $827,000 to support last year's budget. I asked the finance director, I asked the superintendent how that money was spent. It was spent through the UF. There should be some accountability for how that money is spent. State statute is very strict on how that money is spent, and it can't just be dropped in anywhere. A very simple question. I'd just like to know that
I
where
can
that
answer
money
that,
was
I
spent.
can answer that right now, and I know that, but I just want to clear this up. How that works is, so when you're building a budget, you put in that as a revenue. It's not specific. It's like a
Correct.
revenue to fund the budget. So it's not put in the budget for any specific purpose. It's a revenue. And so it's spent across the budget to support that whole budget. And it's not spent on any, obviously it's spent on something in the budget, but it's added as a revenue, just like the town's commitment, just like the state's commitment is that list of revenues that you've seen.
Sure.
So that fund balance and the actual fund balance that was budgeted for that FY24 budget was $1 million from that undesignated fund. When the auditor completed his books, we only needed to use 800 and whatever you said, 2747.
That's the question I'm
To
asking.
support the budget,
I know, and what specifically did it?
salaries.
Because in the
Fuel.
state statute, it says you can only use that for state and local share, to reduce state and local share.
Right, so it's shown in the budget as on the local share, we're using that undesignated fund.
And there's no other items in there that was used to support.
But the
Then there's-
statute
well, let
does
me-
not say it says to use it to reduce the local share.
Right.
So
And you don't have, so there's no document that exists that shows where those, so my next question would be, there was some activity 2024 where the superintendent left and there was a settlement, where did that money come from? In addition, you don't have to answer this now. And where did over almost $100,000 in legal fees, where did that come from? Did it come from 827? Is that in there? And again, you don't have to answer that now.
I couldn't answer if I wanted to, and I wasn't here, so.
Why does this budget, this is another question, why is this budget based the numbers from the prior budget amount? I asked this question, it may just be an accounting issue, and that's fine, but why does this prior budget use from the prior budget amount, not what was actual? So I'll use an example now. It seems the budget number has gone down to 20,592,000, and it's listed in here that it's just an increase of 864 from the prior budget number. We don't have how much was spent in 2025 yet, but that number and my calculations are going to be $6 to $17 million. That's my calculation. So if that's the case, and we're going to spend 20 million, we're talking $2.5 million increase, not 864. And if somebody has that number where the end of 25 expenditures are going to end up, that's perfect. But I mean, as far as I figured out, it's easy to go per month spending times 12. That's what it is. And I know the finance director has spoken like after session or after budget, sometimes she goes in and pulls, but I can't imagine she's pulling money that's not in the budget. That's my question. So and again, that may just be a counting issue. Why do we just use the prior 19 million and not what was spent for 25? Because I think that's the picture taxpayers want to know.
At the risk of sounding oversimplifying it, I can't use a number I don't know. We don't know where that's going to be on June 30th, 2025. So it'd be impossible for me to say, I know what you budgeted to spend this year. That's what I have to base it against, what you budgeted to spend this year. I don't know. We're 4 months away from the end of the fiscal year.
In this example, we're again, and I'm trying to.
Yeah, how many more questions do you have?
Just 30. And so I'm just kidding, honestly. But anyway, in this example, you got 220,592,000 and you're basing that on 19,728. We know those two numbers. And we're calling it a raise of $867,000.
Actually, no, that's not true. The proposal that the school gave us was $22,014,738, in which case the finance committee went back and said $22 million budget is too high. So the school
So
department.
$5 million, sorry to interrupt, $5 million.
Could you let Brian
The
finish,
school
please?
department came back with what they had for their number, and we, as a finance committee, looked at it and said $22 million is way too much money for this town to accept. So we needed to give them a point of reference, and we gave them a point of reference. It was based off in this year's budget. But the actual number that the school department came to was a $22 million budget, which was in excess of 7%. And this committee looked at it and said, we don't like that number. So we gave them some level of guidance. And
Could have been-
that's where that.
Could have been
guidance-
24 million,
That's what they
26,
said they needed.
28 million. What I'm saying is that's that's a great figure and a great place to start, but that's not where we're at now. And my question was, again, it's an accounting, there may be just why people draw from the prior budget to this number and they call it, that's the raise. When in fact, the taxpayers want to know it's 2.5 million unless somebody adjusts that for me somehow, or we find out later. But currently, the approximate spending as we end 25, and you're right, I don't know that number, but certainly whatever that ends up is not going to be, it's definitely not going to be 19,728,000. It never has been. We have
What's it gonna
never.
be?
Pardon?
What's it gonna be?
I'm saying it's gonna be 17 million. And that means we're asking for $2 million increase in the school budget. So I'm looking for that number to be a little more accurate than just basing off a budget number that we never even achieved. Will the school board correct the cost center format to include career and technical education? Will that be corrected?
There's nothing to correct yet. I can say it to you a billion times. There's nothing to correct. There's nothing there. There is nothing raised by the locals to support that. They are supported directly by the state.
I understand that. This isn't a number question. I'm asking, will you follow state statute to format the budget as it's?
So we can put zero in there and you can vote on $0.
It's actually,
Ed, I'm asking you to wrap
Yeah.
up the public comment.
and that's also, I will, yeah. And that's also in the town charter that the format is that way. State statute format and also in that. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I appreciate your time, folks. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Next, up to old business, the second reading of the FY 26 budget. I make a motion to approve the second reading of the FY 26 budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just to let Ed know, we did meet one time as an entire board on the budget. So there was, besides the finance committee, we all met, and Ron was there also. And we kind of decided on a number or told them what we thought. So we met one time at least as a whole group.
Yes, thank you,
I
Tony, for
want to make
adding
sure you
that.
knew that.
Any other discussion?
A few points. That being said, Mr. Reynolds, we didn't have the payroll budget at that time. It's come to my attention that positions have been cut or reduced, and I didn't find out about that. I want the community to understand that I did not find out about those cuts until days after last Monday's meeting.
That's,
incorrect.
yeah,
It is not incorrect.
That is incorrect. That's
Yeah.
factually incorrect. You sat behind me in a finance committee meeting
You-
where everyone was in that room and Mr.
Everybody got
Walker
it.
went over.
Yeah.
thank you,
And
James.
Mr.
Yeah.
Walker went through every single
It
position.
was proposed that those might be, but the
227.
actual cuts to the positions and the reduction and forced resignation of staff, I was not aware that that was happening.
We all got it on February 27th. Everybody got a copy of that. It was at a finance meeting, but everybody was in attendance and everybody got a copy of
Did you
that.
allow public comment at that meeting?
No, we
That
didn't.
wasn't, your
That's not
your
the question.
comment was that you did not have that information.
My comment
You did.
was, so on that, you had that you were cutting certain staff, you had some staff listed, other staff have been squished into resigning that I was not aware of. So I just want the public to understand that I was not aware that those positions were being cut. I did not have the payroll budget, therefore I had no way to know. And in the past, when the payroll budget, and I've been told that people can't hear me, so I apologize for seeming, I don't know how it comes across, but in the past, when we have received the budget, I was able to see all of the payroll over the last 4 years. This is the first year that the payroll has been withheld. I was an outspoken advocate at that time because one of the nurse positions was cut, and I caught that because as a constituent at the time, I saw that there was a 0 line item for a nurse. In 2022, I advocated that that be added back into the budget. This year, ironic, I didn't have the payroll budget. And at the time, I was told all sorts of reasons as to why we did not have that. And now I'm finding out, and now I'm concerned, and I've lost trust in this process and trust in this committee about the transparency or lack thereof for the fact that we did not have that and that staff were cut. And so to project at the last meeting that no positions were affected was inaccurate.
Can I pause you right there? Because
Sure.
at the last meeting, I specifically remember reading
Yes.
this sheet of paper.
Yes,
I
you did.
remember reading about high school distance learning. I read what the positions were. We all had this on February 27th. Now that you have the payroll specific numbers, what is it that you were surprised to see?
Well, what I was surprised to see was a lack of transparency. The fact that the budget is driven with, what teacher makes $1.8 million? No teacher.
That's a budget line.
That's right, it's a budget line. So I can compare this to other schools which break down days off, health insurance, all of their benefits. And I was gonna print it off for you, but I know you guys aren't receptive to that. To see that we're shoving line items with total numbers and then other line items are zeroed out, like it is such a snarl of information that just so the community understands, I picked this up at 3:25 PM today.
We all had this last week, as we know. And so what number, now that you've seen, no, I was asking a question.
No,
You
I'm
paused.
not finished.
Well, no, what number is wrong, Haley, between what we've provided you for what that total was versus now that you have the detail? What is the discrepancy?
The statute is clear that the community needs to have this at least 7 days in advance, not 3.5 hours. Granted, I stopped into the office on Friday. I asked for a copy. I was denied a copy.
Did you ask me, Haley, did you ask me for that copy?
You were standing in the doorway and I asked Jody.
Did you ask me for a copy?
Yes, I
Because
asked you.
I'm really getting
I
tired here.
emailed you. Yes, I did.
First off, I want to clarify something. You know, how it was done in years past, I can't tell you that because I was not here for that. So I am taking my direction from, this is how this is done. So I'm getting just a little bit tired of some insinuation that somehow I show up and I'm withholding information. Yes, you came into the office on Friday. You did not speak to me. You did ask after you
Did I
left.
email you that morning? for
Please
the budget?
allow
Yes, I did.
Mr. Walker to finish. Please finish,
It's
David.
fine. I did not deny Haley a copy of this. Everybody was sent electronically, and I said we would get copies as soon as. This is a significant document. So to jam these out quickly and is impossible, so. but
It is not
there's no
quickly.
intent to withhold information.
You're right. It shouldn't be done quickly. That's why the statute is clear that it needs to be at least 7 days in advance.
It's not the
I
statute,
have,
Haley.
yes, it is.
No, it's not.
I have been asking since October. I emailed you
Haley, I
Friday.
would not try to tell you how to splint a broken arm because I respect you as a healthcare provider. Please don't try to tell me what the statute says about school budgets that I've been doing for 25 years. It says 7 days before the legislative body will vote on it, not, this is not the
This is not a
legislative
Yes,
body.
it
that
is. You are
accepts the budget.
inaccurate.
No, no, no.
You were inaccurate.
Haley, what specific
And
questions
regardless,
do you have
Miss
on
Whaler.
this budget?
Miss Whaler, you spend your entire experience trying to shut me down communicating. I respectfully ask that you just let me speak. No one, first of all, it's inaccurate. We are a legislative body and the law is very clear, and I have pointed that out to you and I can as well. Regardless, why wouldn't you want to give it sooner than 3.5 hours? Or as soon as I left the office on Friday, I got home and received an email and then I replied back to you. I was just there and I asked for a copy of the budget. I'm not gonna split hairs with you. The point is, it should have been provided. And even if it was, I was gone all weekend at a tournament out of town, I don't have time to review it and I'm trying to be educated to make sure I'm making an informed decision. I understand that the process is designed so that everybody here already knows how they're going to be voting. And so that any questions that I ask don't really matter because you guys all have the numbers. That's how this goes. I get it. I get it. When I ran for office originally, I thought that I could be part of the solution and I realized that that is quickly removed from your control as long as you have the numbers.
Where are you going with
number have
what
you
we're trying to
found
get
here?
to?
You would, what is your question? Both of you asked me a question. Please clarify.
Chair,
We're asking the same question.
What was
go
it?
ahead, Chair.
What number is it that you want to see on this budget?
When I'm looking at an actual number and I'm looking at what's reported to the state, I'm looking at what we actually spent last year. There's no way I can justify a $20.5 million budget when we spent less than $19 million last year. There are numbers that are not explained to this date about what was spent. There are questions that are gone unanswered. It's very hard to ask questions and to make sure that we are informed in advance when I don't have the information. It is frustrating for me. It's frustrating for the community and it builds chaos. This is the most fractured process I've ever seen and it is not designed to be this way.
You still didn't answer my question. What number is it that you wanted to see? And we could consider it as a committee. What number is it?
So in 3.5 hours while I cooked my family their
That's not the
supper,
question I
how will
asked.
I even get those answers for you, Miss Whaler?
These numbers are the same numbers that we've had since almost, actually, David, have these changed since the 27th of
I didn't
February?
even have it before Friday afternoon via email after I left
I
the
didn't have the
office.
detail of the payroll. I
That's
asked
right.
you also
I
what
still don't.
numbers you saw changed there that was concerning to you, but I still haven't gotten that answer.
Because when I look at a budget and I see $18 million for one staff member, because they look them all together.
That's called a budget line, Mrs. Keiser.
No.
That was my point when I
No.
said that putting the personnel piece of it has little utility to us because we can't have a direct impact on the personnel line. So a line in the school budget covers teachers at, say, the elementary school. And I say elementary school just because they were the first that I saw. But a
I see.
line has all the teachers and that is the budget line. I can't affect that line. I can't affect the retirement line or the benefits line. We can
Nor am I
affect the total
trying
number
to,
of it.
nor am I trying to. And I thought it was interesting that you kept mentioning that you didn't want to see the certain payroll
I don't.
information. And what I also found interesting about that was, it's because you probably knew that there were cuts coming that I didn't know. So you didn't want to be accused of knowing which line items that were.
What cuts are you seeing that are different than what we were provided on February 27th?
I was not aware that those were projected of possible cuts. I did not know they were being truly removed from the budget. How would I know the number of those cuts?
You were
It says
provided the same
eliminate
document.
one, and
We
it gives
all
the
had the
list.
same document on February 27th at the same time. I even had a conversation with Mr. Walker that afternoon, and I said, actually, you know what? Stop right now, because I want to be able to straight face and say, we all saw it at the same time. None of us knew what it was going to be.
None of us knew what was going to be.
What was gonna be on that sheet, and I had no idea that they had done so much work on the budget to get it down to that number. I had no idea we were getting this piece of paper that had how many? 4 eliminations and 2 reductions. No idea. We all got it at the same time.
So in February, when we all had a joint meeting and we talked about cuts, and my recommendation was go find the money elsewhere. Do not cut staff, go find the money elsewhere. And you said, I agree with you. Then we come to the meeting and we voted and come to find out how many staff were cut that weren't aware. Now we were cutting staff.
We can't get there without it.
And that was the
The
point of that Zoom meeting.
non-payroll, which was the focus, is a 2.6% increase this year, which is well below inflation. So I believe that the school department cut their non-payroll as tight as they could with the understanding of, for us to make it into that bracket, what you can't get in non-payroll was gonna come out of payroll. That's the hard part. So if we go 0 on non-payroll, that means all the normal expenses, whether it's fuel, bus repairs, or heating oil, paper, that's 0 increase. That's a management problem. That's $100,000, that's an additional $400,000 that needs to come out of the school's non-payroll budget.
And to your point, thank you for bringing that up. We asked last time, because you got to remember, the biggest question is, what's the impact of the students? And we asked the administration, I remember specifically saying, what is the impact of reducing and eliminating these positions? And there's no impact to our students. That's why we're all here at the end of the day, for the students. And I remember specifically asking that question.
I remember you specifically asking that question to one person, and I know that you know that that's not accurate, and we have received feedback that that's not accurate. So if you can sleep good at night knowing that, then so be it. I don't.
Do we have any other discussion that, Tony, did you have anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I wasn't supposed to speak at that meeting and I apologize because I couldn't keep my mouth shut, but I kind of warned David, with our cuts that we had talked about, are you sure you want to tell the teachers now? Or should we wait until we let the town council give us some of their feedback? And he made the right decision to tell the teachers now and prepare them, the changes that we had decided on, so.
Thank you for adding that,
So we
Tony.
did decide on it, but it does affect some of the students or may affect some of the students. So we just want to be clear. We have moved a few positions around and had a few small cuts and David's tried to, and the principals have all tried to do the best job they can.
Thank you for adding that. James? Brian?
All set?
Haley? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Next, I move to adjourn the meeting at 6:59 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.